Welcome back to this episode of the You're Not Crazy podcast. Something I've been thinking about a lot recently is that I put out a lot of content. And if you follow me on TikTok, Instagram, here on the podcast, if you're in the membership, if you work with me individually, you know that I am constantly putting out information and resources into the universe. And while I do that to hopefully be helpful and to provide validation and guidance and support and all of those things that I so desperately want to share with you, I also think that sometimes there's a thing as too much information. There's a point where it can become overwhelming. And that's something that I've been trying to navigate more recently is how do I find this balance where I'm able to put out information and provide resources and encouragement and validation and support, but do it in a way that is not overwhelming and where it doesn't feel like it is too much to digest and that you're behind on it. And while by no means have I come to a conclusion as how I intend to bigger picture solve that problem completely, one thing that I have come to the conclusion on is that during the holiday season, everyone is overwhelmed. I'm sure you're feeling overwhelmed. I know I feel overwhelmed at times. There's a lot going on. And so that is my long-winded way of saying that I'm going to try to keep the next couple of podcast episodes short and snappy. And I know you might be thinking, Tori, you just rambled for a few minutes. That is true. But I want you to know these ones are intended to be short and snappy episodes because I want them to be helpful for you. If you've been following me for a long time, you know that this entire second adventure, let's call it, of Confident Boundaries, where I have the podcast and social media and the Confident Boundaries membership, and now the Confident Boundaries with Toxic Parents online course. All of this has been a relatively new venture for me that has unfolded over the past 2 years. And so it has been the biggest learning curve of my life. I went to school to be a therapist, not a business person, not a media person, not someone in marketing. It has been a huge learning curve. It has been a really interesting ride, and I have enjoyed so many aspects of it. And I'm so appreciative for all of you who have been along for the ride too. And there have been a lot of things that I've learned along the way. And I think that as a cycle breaker myself, I have a desire to do it all too. At heart, I'm a perfectionist and I want to do this really well because I care so much. I so desperately want to make sure that I'm providing you with education and resources and skills and guidance that you can actually use and apply to your life and that it helps. And so it is interesting for me to figure out where that balance is of overwhelming you and not. That is another reason why I have created the Confident Boundaries with Toxic Parents course, because I want it to be very clear and very direct as to where you can go if you are wanting to set boundaries, if you know you need to set boundaries with your toxic parent, and you still can't seem to do it. You still can't seem to convince yourself that you can handle the guilt. You still can't seem to say the words. You still can't seem to enforce the boundary. That is your roadmap. That is your foundation. You can get through that course in one day if you so choose. It is also very possible for you to take a couple of weeks or a month or two to walk through the course. That is a self-guided course, and it is designed that way intentionally so that you can go at your own pace and you can come back to it and revisit the parts of it that you need refreshers on. That is one of my new attempts at hoping to make the information that I'm providing more easily digestible and less overwhelming. Check the link in the show notes, confidentboundaries.com/course to grab that. Coming out of Thanksgiving, it is not uncommon to find that you may have reacted to things in a way that you're not feeling proud of. The holidays can be really stressful, and growing up as a cycle breaker, you learn how to cope in the best ways that you know how with the resources that are available to you. And those aren't always the healthiest ways. I always say that every single cycle breaker was an emotionally immature adult before they became an emotionally mature adult, myself included. That's because we don't see healthy relationships, healthy communication, healthy emotional regulation modeled for us growing up. We see examples of what we don't want to do, but we aren't taught what we do want to do. And it takes a lot of time and effort and energy to learn those things. That really is what breaking the cycle is about. It's about learning how to be an emotionally healthy adult, how to regulate your own emotions, how to identify what those are, how to communicate effectively with your partner and coworkers and just random humans that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. All of these things are learned skills. And they're really hard skills to learn, but they are skills that you can learn. It is not uncommon, especially if you are around your family or interacting with them over the holidays. But even if you're not and you're just under a lot of stress, it's not uncommon for you to react in a way that you're not proud of, for you to have more intense emotions that you have a hard time managing. When that happens, it is also not uncommon for people to feel an immense amount of shame about the way that they handled the holidays, the way that they handled conflict with their family, the way that they handled their own emotional regulation, the way that they did or didn't leave a situation when they were getting flooded. The list can go on and on with the things that we can feel shame about as cycle breakers when we're going through the holidays. There is so much shame in the reality that as a cycle breaker, we have to learn how to be an emotionally healthy adult. And there's so much shame in there because that's what we want more than anything in the world. As a cycle breaker, we want to be different. We want to be safe people. We want to be healthy people. We want to be loved. We want the people that we love to feel safe and cared for. And when we act in ways that we're not proud of, that don't align with that version of ourselves that we so desperately want to be, there is so much shame in that. And it can feel like we aren't allowed to talk about it either, because if we were to acknowledge that we have this problem, that we're struggling, then that's us resolving to the idea that we're the same or similar as this person that we grew up with that was so scary and traumatizing to us. And that's where we get stuck. And that is a huge limitation on our ability to actually do the work to break the cycle. And that's what I want to vocalize today, is that these moments of shame that we experience as cycle breakers, like I said, myself included, because every single person who is breaking the dysfunctional cycle that they grew up in does it poorly before they learn to do it in a healthy. And even when they learn to do it in a healthy way, we are imperfect humans. We mess up and we do things wrong. And we have to take accountability and apologize and repair relationships. It is messy, it is complicated, and that is scary. All of this shame can really lead to a lot of cycle breakers feeling depressed this time of year. And it can be really overwhelming, and it can make people want to curl up in a ball and hide from the world. And that's the last thing I want for you, because that's the last thing that's actually going to help you in this situation. If you have been experiencing a level of post-Thanksgiving Day shame, I want you to know you are not alone. And I want you to know that this is not a defining moment for you in your life. What you need now is not more shame. What you need now is not being harder on yourself. What you need now is support and kindness and compassion and validation. What you need now is to reach out to your therapist if you're in therapy and be honest with them about what you're experiencing. What you need now is to reach out to a friend who is kind and empathetic and wants the best for you, and to allow them to be your friend. In these moments, it is so hard to show kindness to ourselves because really, as a cycle breaker, self-compassion is like one of the harder things that we have to learn. It's not something that we're taught growing up. It's not something that we see modeled growing up. It is not something that feels accessible or normal or safe to us. It is very hard to be compassionate to ourselves. This is a really hard part. It's a really hard part to have done a lot of work on yourself and to not be perfect and to have these setbacks and to have these emotional experiences and these behaviors that don't feel good to you, like snapping or defending yourself, arguing with your family when you know that those aren't productive things and they leave you just feeling worse overall. The things that we feel shame about as cycle breakers are often times the behaviors that feel like they're pulling us back into a time that we felt so helpless and that so desperate to be seen and to be safe. And when you have been doing a lot of work on yourself, it's really hard to feel like you're being pulled back to that place in your life. It's a scary place. It's not a place any of us want to step back into. And it feels really awful and vulnerable, unsafe, and all of the things. This is part of the process, and it's a hard part of the process. And the anecdote is not to fall into the depression, not to listen to that depression voice who tells you you're a horrible person, or that you can't do anything right, or that you should just hide away from the world and shut everyone out. Those are not the voices in your head that are going to help you heal. Those are the voices in your head that are picking on someone who's already having a really, and objectively, that's not going to go well for anyone. It's not going to make anything easier. It's not going to make anything better. And this is a real opportunity to work on breaking that cycle, because in these moments, we have an opportunity to do something different. We have an opportunity to show ourselves kindness. We have an opportunity to reach out for support. We have an opportunity when we have come out from the thick of it to try to process what got us to that place and make decisions to hopefully help ourselves not step back into that place moving forward. This is one of those moments where you really get to break the cycle, because it is in moments like this that we learn how to do what emotionally healthy people do. And that an emotionally mature adult practices compassion towards themselves. An emotionally mature adult reaches out for support. An emotionally mature adult takes care of themselves and recognizes that they're not going to be perfect and that they can learn from this and do differently and make different choices moving forward. This is the opportunity that we have to be that emotionally mature adult that we want to be. And I hope that by talking about it today, you feel like it is a bit more attainable for you, because I promise you, anyone out there who's actually breaking the cycle is not just happy all the time. They are not just going around without conflict. They are in it, and they are making these really hard choices to be kind and compassionate towards themselves when things don't go perfectly. So, on that note, I will leave you here. Until next week, I'll see you soon. Bye.